My stepmother called me useless and banished me after Dad's funeral. What she didn't know was that the mansion legally belonged to me and I just handed her the eviction papers. The house didn't smell like him anymore. That was the first thing I noticed when I walked through the door. No trace of his cologne, the one he wore for decades. No faint aroma of pipe tobacco lingering in the den. No lemon polish on the banister he used to clean himself every Saturday, humming Sinatra. Just lilies. Too many lilies. The kind florists deliver for funerals, not the kind you keep in a home. Even the air felt colder, emptier. Dad was gone, and the house knew it. So did she. I didn't expect a warm welcome, but I thought I'd at least get a nod. Instead, Margaret stood at the top of the stairs like some twisted queen overseeing her conquered kingdom. Black dress too sharp, heels clicking like a countdown. "You're late," she said flatly. I glanced at my watch. I wasn't. "I came straight from the airport," I said. She didn't respond, just turned and walked away. The funeral had been awful. Not because of the priest or the weather, both were fine, but because it felt like a show. A performance curated by Margaret. White roses, long speeches, a slideshow filled with photos that excluded the first 20 years of his life, the ones that included me and my mother. Dad's real life had been quietly erased, and no one even noticed. Not the neighbors, not the board members from his company, not even most of the extended family. Margaret had rewritten the story, and I was no longer in the script. At the reception back at the house, his house, I stood near the back patio, clutching a lukewarm cup of coffee and trying to breathe. The guests swarmed around Margaret like flies to perfume, whispering, nodding, pretending they hadn't all once called her a gold digger behind her back. She'd been my dad's second wife. Met her when I was 15. He was 60. She was younger, the kind of younger that made people raise eyebrows but not ask questions. At least not out loud. I never hated her. Not really. But she always made it clear that I didn't belong. "You're not even dressed properly," she said later, cornering me in the hallway while people milled around the hors d'oeuvres. I looked down. Black suit, black tie. Neat. Simple. "It's a funeral," I said. "Not a photo shoot." She smiled coldly. "No wonder your father never trusted you with anything important. Always so unimpressive." Something in me twitched, but I held still. This wasn't the place. Not yet. An hour later, the guests were gone. Silence settled over the house like dust. I stood in the living room, looking at the empty fireplace where Dad used to sit every winter with a glass of scotch and a crossword. Margaret entered, heels off now, holding a half-full wine glass. She didn't say anything at first, just stared at me. Then, "You should leave." I blinked. "What?" "You heard me. You've said your goodbye. There's no reason for you to stay." "I'm here for the reading of the will," I said. "The lawyer." She cut me off. "There won't be one. Everything's already been handled. I'm the sole beneficiary. The house, the accounts, the business shares, all mine." I frowned. "That's not what Dad said." She laughed. "Your father said a lot of things. He was sentimental, weak even at the end. But I took care of him. Not you." That word, weak, stung more than it should have. She stepped closer. "You were never part of this family. You were an accident he tried to fix with weekend visits and phone calls. But we both know you were nothing more than a reminder of a life he wanted to forget." I clenched my fists, not in rage, in restraint. She leaned in, voice low, cold. "You're useless. Always were. And now you're out." She handed me an envelope. Inside a check. $5,000. A farewell prize. I stared at it for a long moment, then looked up. "You expect me to leave with this?" She smiled. "Consider it generous. Most strays don't get severance." I folded the check in half, then in quarters, then tucked it into my pocket. She tilted her head. "Still so obedient. That's your problem. No spine." I didn't reply, didn't give her the satisfaction. Instead, I picked up my bag, the same one I'd brought in that morning, and walked toward the front door. At the threshold, I paused, turned slightly. "You should check the mail tomorrow," I said quietly. Then I left. I stayed at a cheap motel that night. One of those places with buzzing fluorescent lights and a vending machine that only took exact change. I didn't sleep much. Too many memories buzzing in my skull like flies behind glass. Dad and I hadn't always been close. He wasn't warm, wasn't soft, but he tried. After Mom died, he did his best. Sent birthday cards, showed up to high school plays, paid for college. He didn't always say the right thing. Sometimes didn't say anything at all. But I always knew he was trying. And in his own quiet way, he loved me. That was enough. I reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope. The real one. The one Margaret had no idea existed. It was cream-colored, thick paper. My name written in Dad's unmistakable blocky handwriting. Inside, a notarized letter. A copy of the deed. A statement from the family attorney. Dated 6 weeks before he died. Short. Direct. In the event of my passing, I hereby transfer ownership of the Clark estate to my son. No contest. No conditions. He knows what to do. Signed Harold J. Clark. My hands trembled slightly as I read it again. He'd left it all to me. The house. The legacy. The proof that I hadn't imagined his love. He'd just done it quietly. Of course he had. I sat back on the creaky motel bed and let the weight of it sink in. Margaret thought she'd won. Thought she'd erased me. Thought she'd claimed everything. She had no idea. And tomorrow, she would. I didn't go back to the motel right away. After I left the house, I drove around for almost an hour, no music, just the dull hum of the engine and the sound of my own thoughts grinding in my head. The city looked different than I remembered. Colder. Smaller. Or maybe it was just me who had changed. I pulled into the empty parking lot behind an old diner Dad used to take me to when I was a kid. We'd sit in a corner booth and he'd let me order extra fries while he scribbled notes on a legal pad. I'd pretend not to care that he was working, but secretly I just wanted to be near him. That's how it was with him. Not loud love, but present. I took the envelope from my bag again. My name in his handwriting. He never wrote me letters. Never left birthday messages or sticky notes on the fridge. But this was his voice. I unfolded the deed once more, then the letter. Simple. Everything you need is here. You were always the one with sense. Keep it safe. And don't let her rewrite the story. That last line hit hardest. Because that's exactly what Margaret had tried to do. Erase me. Rewrite history like I never belonged. But he saw it coming. He'd always seen her for what she was. He just never said it aloud. I remember the first time he introduced us. She was polished, perfect, wearing perfume so strong it made my eyes water. I was 16, sullen, grieving mom with quiet fists and bad grades. She shook my hand like I was a client. And when Dad stepped out of the room for 5 minutes, she leaned in and said, I don't do baggage. So keep your little teenage breakdowns to yourself. I never told Dad. I just backed away emotionally 1 inch at a time. He was happy. Or so I told myself. And that was enough. But I noticed things. How she smiled wider when his friends were around. How she flinched when I said Mom out loud. How she always made sure I was seated just far enough from them at dinner to feel like a guest. She wanted the legacy, not the history. Years passed. I went off to college, then grad school. Dad paid for it all. No fanfare, no "we're so proud of you" speeches, just silent deposits and short check-in calls. But when I came home, he always met me at the door. Gave me a tight, one-armed hug. Asked if I was eating enough. It wasn't warm and fuzzy, but it was real. 3 months before he died, I got a call. It was late. I was living out west, working 2 jobs, trying to build something of my own. He didn't say much on the phone. Just, I need you to come home. There's some paperwork we need to look at. I came. No hesitation. When I arrived, Margaret wasn't there. He led me to his study. Sat me down. Handed me a folder. Inside, trust documents, a copy of the deed, and a preliminary letter from the family attorney. I looked up confused. He just said, she'll try to take everything. But this house should be yours. I didn't know what to say. I'm not trying to start a war, he added. I just need to make sure you're protected. And then he handed me a pen. Now sitting in my car behind the diner, I thought about that moment. The way his hand trembled slightly. The way he avoided eye contact until I signed. He hadn't been sure he had time left. But he'd made time for this. He wasn't just leaving me a house. He was leaving me a line in the sand. The next morning, I drove to the office of Gordon and Finch LLP, the law firm my dad had trusted for decades. Marcus Gordon himself, silver-haired, composed, with eyes like polished stone, greeted me without a smile but with a nod that felt heavier than words. "I was wondering when you'd come," he said. I placed the envelope on his desk. He opened it slowly, eyes scanning the documents with quiet intensity. When he reached the signature, he exhaled through his nose. "Smart man," he murmured. "Your father knew exactly what she'd do. She said everything was already transferred to her." Marcus looked up. "That's because she forged a revocation document 2 weeks before he died." I froze. "She what?" He nodded. "Tried to nullify the transfer. But she failed. The notary she used wasn't certified. It won't hold." My stomach twisted. "She really thought she'd get away with it," I said. Marcus gave me a long look. "She still does." That afternoon we began the paperwork. Marcus prepared the official notice to vacate backed by the certified deed. We filed copies with the city. Notified the estate board. Everything legal. Everything clean. I watched it happen like I was underwater. Detached. Floating. But under it all, a fire had started. Not rage. Not spite. Something colder. Sharper. Resolve. I spent the next 2 days sleeping on a friend's couch. Didn't tell him much. Just said I was handling family stuff. He didn't ask. I appreciated that. At night, I replayed every moment in that house. The way she spoke to me. The way she looked at Dad's things like they were prizes she'd earned. The way she threw a $5,000 check in my face like a tip for good behavior. She thought she'd won. Thought I was done. But I was just getting started. The envelope was delivered by courier, not me. I wanted it to feel official. I wanted her to read every line alone in that hollow house she tried to claim. Inside. This letter serves as formal notice that the property at 47 East Willow Lane is no longer under your legal ownership. You are to vacate the premises within 72 hours from delivery of this notice. Failure to comply will result in court-mandated removal. Signed, Elijah Clark, rightful owner. Certified by Marcus Gordon. I didn't hear from her. Not the first day. Not the second. But on the third, right before the deadline, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. There was a long silence. Then her voice. "You think you've won something?" I said nothing. "You think this makes you better than me?" He pitied you. That's all this was. Guilt? I let her talk. Let her spit poison. Then she said, quieter, "You're really going to put me out on the street?" "No," I said. "The law is." She laughed bitterly. "You're just like him. Cold." I almost replied. Almost told her that he was never cold. He was quiet. Measured. And everything he gave me was earned. But I didn't owe her that truth. So I said, "Goodbye, Margaret," and hung up. That night I drove by the house. Lights off. Windows dark. No car in the driveway. She was gone. The house, my house, was still. Not just empty, but silent in a way I hadn't heard since childhood. Like it was finally breathing again. I didn't go inside. Not yet. I wasn't ready. But I stood on the sidewalk for a long time. Hands in my pockets. Heart not pounding, just steady. She tried to erase me. But I was still here. Not because I fought back with fire. But because I endured. Because I waited. Watched. Listened. And when the time came, I stood up. Not to destroy her. But to reclaim what was already mine. I didn't sleep the night before. Not because I was nervous. Because I needed the silence. It was the same silence I used to sit in as a kid. When Margaret's voice rose down the hallway. Sharp like broken glass. Just loud enough that Dad pretended he couldn't hear. I learned young that sometimes power comes not from raising your voice, but from knowing exactly when not to. The morning of the deadline, I put on a dark gray suit. Not to look intimidating. Not for theater. Just because it made me feel grounded. I folded the official copies of the deed and the vacate order into a leather folder and tucked it under my arm. Then I drove to the house. Our house. My house. Margaret was home. Her car. The same sleek black sedan Dad had bought her for their 5th anniversary. Sat crooked in the driveway, one tire slightly deflated. The lawn was overgrown. The porch light still on, though the sun was already high. The place looked tired. Like even the house itself was ready to be done with her. I walked up the stone steps and knocked. 3 slow, deliberate taps. Took her a full minute to open. She looked different. Not ruined. Not broken. Just tired. Hair undone. No makeup. A silk robe pulled tight over her frame like armor that didn't quite fit anymore. When she saw me, her expression didn't change. "You," she said. I sent you notice, I said calmly. 72 hours. She looked over her shoulder into the house. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my concern, I replied. She smiled. Not kindly. You always were cold. Just like him. I didn't move. She stepped aside. Fine. Come in. If you're here to gloat, let's get it over with. I didn't reply, didn't smile, just stepped into the house. It hit me harder than I expected. The air inside still carried echoes. The stairs creaked the same way they had when I was 9, sneaking down late for water. The chandelier still flickered in the corner like it never quite recovered from that one bad storm. But everything else? Changed. The framed photos were gone. Not replaced, just missing. No wedding picture of Dad and Mom. No family photos. Not even one of me as a kid, standing next to him with a fish I'd pretended to catch. She'd erased us, rewritten everything, as if she'd always been the beginning and end of his life. I assume you think this is justice, she said, walking toward the kitchen, kicking me out of the only home I've known for 20 years. I followed slowly, placing the folder on the counter between us. I think this is overdue, I said. And legal, she scoffed. Oh, don't you love that word now? Legal. You think because you have a few pieces of paper with some old man's signature on it, you've won something? She opened the folder anyway. Read the deed. Her hands trembled barely, but I saw it. You're bluffing, she said. I shook my head. The city registry's already updated. Your name's been removed. You bastard, she whispered. I looked at her for a long time. No, I'm just the son of the man you underestimated. She laughed, sharp and bitter. I took care of him, you know. I fed him, bathed him, sat by his bed while you ran off living your little life. And he left it to you. I didn't say anything. She stepped closer. Why you? You didn't even visit in the last month. Because he didn't want me to see him like that, I said softly. Her expression flickered. I continued. And because he knew exactly who you were. That's why he transferred it quietly. Why he used a separate notary. Why he had the lawyer present during signing. He saw you coming. Her voice dropped. You think he loved you? I didn't answer. Didn't need to. Because that was the real wound for her. Not the house. Not the deed. But the undeniable truth that he trusted me more than he ever trusted her. Do you know how humiliating this is? She snapped. To be kicked out by a child? I'm 31, I said calmly. And this isn't revenge. It's closure. For who? She spat. For both of us. She stood there for a long time, chest heaving, face pale. Then quietly, I have nowhere to go. I didn't blink. You've had 20 years to build something for yourself. She stared. And for the first time I saw it. Beneath the arrogance, beneath the cruelty. She was afraid. Not of me. Of being nothing now that her anchor was gone. She turned away. You know, I could have contested it. No, you couldn't, I said. The revocation you submitted was invalid. Your notary wasn't certified. And Marcus Gordon has your signature on the original documents. She said nothing. I stepped toward the hallway. You have until midnight, I said. I'm not a criminal, she called after me. No, I said over my shoulder. But you're no longer a resident. I walked upstairs, opened the door to Dad's study. Everything was covered in dust cloths like she was planning to remodel or sell. I pulled one off the chair by the window, sat down, closed my eyes, and for a second I could feel him. His presence, his peace, the quiet order of how he lived. I wasn't here to reclaim things. I was here to reclaim truth. When I came back downstairs, Margaret was sitting at the kitchen table. A suitcase by her feet. A box of papers. Jewelry. A framed photo I didn't recognize. She didn't look up. I'll be out in an hour. I nodded once. And left. That night, I stood outside the house at 11:58 p.m. A black town car idled in the driveway. She walked out slowly, wearing dark glasses even in the night. We didn't speak. She got in the car and it drove away. No scene. No shouting. Just an end. I stepped back inside. Alone now. The house echoed differently. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like reset. I went to the study, took the old bottle of scotch from the cabinet, poured a glass, sat in Dad's chair. I didn't toast, didn't talk aloud, just sat there, in the quiet. Finally, the kind of quiet that didn't ache. It took me 3 days to step into the master bedroom. I kept avoiding it, walking past the door like it was a painting I didn't want to look at for too long. Not because of pain, not anymore, but because I wasn't sure if stepping in would make it real. That she was gone. That the house was mine. That the silence wasn't temporary. But on the 3rd day, I opened the door. The room was bare, stripped of emotion. No personal touches. Just expensive bedding and lifeless walls. She'd made it into a hotel suite, not a home. But under the gloss I could still feel traces. The dent on the windowsill from Dad's old ashtray. The small squeak in the 3rd floorboard from the left. The way the light fell in the morning, the same way it always had. This house remembered him. And maybe, just maybe, it remembered me too. I didn't move in. Not really. I slept in one of the guest rooms for a week, keeping to one side of the house, like I was a guest in my own inheritance. People called. Cousins I hadn't heard from in years. Some neighbors. Even 2 reporters sniffing for drama. I didn't answer. I wasn't interested in the narrative. The story I needed had already played out. The chapter was closed. Now it was up to me to decide what came next. I sat on the back patio with coffee and the morning sun on my face, listening to the rustle of trees Dad had planted himself. That was when Mr. Horowitz showed up. He was my dad's old neighbor, lived 2 houses down. A widower, well into his 70s, always wore suspenders and a slightly mismatched tie. He walked right up like he had every right, holding a photo in one hand and a Tupperware container in the other. "I brought you brisket," he said. I smiled. "Good morning to you too." He sat without waiting to be invited. "Your father would have wanted you to eat something real. You're too thin." I took the container. Then he handed me the photo. It was black and white, a little faded. Me, maybe 10 years old, standing beside Dad under the old oak in the front yard. He had one hand on my shoulder. I was grinning, holding a model airplane. "I took that," Horowitz said. "You were a funny little thing, always asking too many questions." I laughed softly, then fell quiet. He looked at me. "You planning to stay?" I shook my head. "I don't think so." "Why not?" I glanced at the house. "Because I don't need to." The decision came slowly, but clearly. I wasn't going to live in the house. I wasn't going to wear it like armor or hold it over anyone. It had been part of a battle I never wanted. Now that the war was over, I didn't need the trophy. So I called Marcus, told him to list it quietly, selectively. I wanted it to go to someone who would love it. Not for the size, not for the legacy, but for the quiet in the mornings, the creak in the stairs, the shade under the oak tree. I used the money to buy a smaller place outside the city. 2 bedrooms, 1 level, an overgrown garden I couldn't wait to fail at. It wasn't impressive. It wasn't intimidating. But it was mine. Truly mine. No ghosts. No whispers. No bitterness in the walls. Just space. And sunlight. And the chance to breathe. I started freelancing again. Small financial analysis jobs, quiet projects. No one knew my name unless they needed to. No one cared where I came from. And that was exactly how I liked it. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing legacy. I wasn't trying to prove I belonged. I wasn't anyone's shadow. I was just me. One afternoon, I got a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Inside, 1 sentence. "You were right. I was afraid." I stared at it for a long time. No emotion bubbled up. No triumph. No rage. Just stillness. I folded the letter once and tucked it in a drawer. Not as a keepsake. Just as proof that even people like her eventually look in the mirror. The house sold 2 months later. The new owners were a young couple with a golden retriever and a kid on the way. They sent me a thank you card with a photo of their family in front of the house. Smiling. The oak tree was in bloom. The porch had a new swing. The story had moved on. And so had I. Sometimes, when I'm in town, I'll pass by the old place. Not to stare. Not to reminisce. Just to see it full again. Lived in. Warm. That's how I know I made the right choice. People think justice is about balance. An eye for an eye, clean reversal. But sometimes, real justice isn't in taking something back. It's in refusing to be ruined. It's in staying soft when the world wanted you bitter. In walking away whole even when they tried to break you. I wasn't useless. I wasn't weak. I wasn't erased. I was always here. And now I get to live like it,